Hello and welcome to CIPR TV, brought to you by Marketeers 40C and the CIPR social media panel. I'm Russell Goldsmith, and joining me in the studio today to discuss the challenges digital and social media presents to traditional publishers and the opportunities this creates for public relations is David Pemsel, Chief Commercial Officer at Guardian News and Media. So welcome, David. Now this is a first for CIPR TV, as today we're streaming live on the Guardian Media website, so a special welcome to viewers watching us for the first time. And as ever with CIPR TV, we want your input throughout the show, so please do tweet your questions for David, or in fact any comments about the discussion using the hashtag CIPRtv. And if you're watching on the main website, then you can submit them in the question box below the video stream. So welcome, David.
Welcome.
Now I've done a little bit of research courtesy of LinkedIn, and looking into your background, there's quite a bit of broadcast. So 5 years at ITV, where you were Group Marketing Director, and before that working with Elizabeth Murdoch at Shine Entertainment. So given we're discussing the future of publishing, would it be fair to say that there's potential for a bit of sort of broadcast, video, audio in there?
I mean, I've spent the last 20 years working in and around content, whether I've been working for advertising or, as you say, ITV, and with Liz. And I suppose all of this is around how one monetises content, and video is obviously one component, print is another, and video is a huge component of what we do, and the convergence of the written word plus storytelling through video is all just part of what people expect now from any digital print organisation. So yes.
Well, that leads nicely on, because obviously the Guardian certainly been at the forefront in terms of embracing digital media and extending its reach beyond the UK as well. I know we've had a couple of questions in that have come, from people watching outside the UK today, which we'll come on to. But how would you define a newspaper? Because it's more than obviously just print, which I know has been the case for a while, but it's certainly changing. I mean, we're streaming live on your website today.
Yeah, I mean, the whole concept of news provision in this digital space is completely different. I mean, in 1995, I think, was the first time the Guardian sort of stepped into that digital space. Yeah. It did it without really understanding cannibalisation or how it would take audiences away from the print product. And here we are today. The Guardian is now like the third largest website in the world in terms of quality news, and the largest cross-platform news provider across tablet and mobile. And that's because it's fully embraced all of those digital opportunities. It's made it part of its remit to ensure that storytelling and the content that we provide is available and accessible across all platforms.
So what's the breakdown of your audience then in terms of UK and beyond?
Well, in terms of the world, it's a third in the rest of the world, third in the US, and a third in the UK. And that's as a result of us being totally open. We want our content to travel. We'll come on and talk about how we sort of integrate with social, etc. Yeah. But it's a very conscious decision to ensure that we have the biggest reach, and critically that our stories have the biggest impact globally as well as domestically. Okay. And digital has allowed us to be able to do that.
Well, we're talking of reach and sort of like the style of content. Your CEO, Andrew Miller, and your editor, Alan Rusbridger, have referred to open approach to journalism. So what I was keen to find out is maybe if you can elaborate a little bit more on what that means, but also given this show's going out for PRs and who work with brands and creating content, a lot of brands will see themselves as media owners as well and content providers. So how does that all work together?
I think one of the distinctions that we make is that you're either sort of on the web or of the web. And I think sort of on the web sounds like it's a very two-dimensional, one-dimensional view. You just put your content on, people read it. And I suppose then of the web is more about just being part of that social ecology of storytelling, people interacting with your content, people being able to contribute to it. And the days of a news provider just to assert a story saying, this is what you should think. We've got a journalist who sits quietly on their own, sitting behind a desk saying, this is what we think, you read it, go home, end of the story. It's completely changed. And I think once we start to write anything or have comment on any story, that's simply the start of the conversation. And that conversation then creates more conversations, and those conversations then input and change and adapt the story itself. So I think rather than being fearful of what digital offers, we have made the conscious decision to be part of it and be part of the ecology about how it all works. So rather than being closed and paywalls and saying we're going to have a finite amount of audience, you'll read our content and pay us a certain amount of money each month, we'd rather extend that reach and make all of our readers part of that conversation. And social and Twitter and all the other social platforms allows people to be able to comment and contribute on stories, which allows us to be able to be informed by what our readers think and say. That then allows us to be able to then reinterpret and curate stories based upon what everybody's thinking, rather than just people sat behind desks asserting what stories are.
Well, we'll expand on paywalls in a second, because we've had a question in via Twitter for that. But on that note, has that created a whole new role new roles within the team in terms of moderators? How do you moderate the content on the website?
Yeah, I mean, comment is a huge part of our site, and comment is a very sort of philosophically a thing that we really pride on, in terms of allowing people to be able to have their say, contribute, to be able to say whether they think that we're wrong or right. And moderation is part of that. Some people sort of say, God, you seem to elect too many people into the site, and does that distract about what the key story is? But actually, the more immersive and the more collaborative and the more open we are with the content, frankly, the better the product, we think. And moderation plays part of that, and I think what we are attempting to do is to be able to bring people into that story, curate, and then find almost the optimal way of telling stories based upon what everyone's thinking, rather than just a couple of journalists writing or asserting what they think is right. Okay,
well, let's come on to commercial models. Obviously, that's your role within The Guardian. Now, The Guardian reported losses of more than 44 million last year. We had a question in from a CIPR TV regular via Twitter, @Wads, so that's Stephen Waddington, and he's asked, on what basis is The Guardian a sustainable business model? And it would be good, perhaps, if you could expand on revenue models which will enable the newspaper to survive.
Yeah, I mean, Andrew Miller took over 2 years ago and stated a 5-year plan to break even within 5 years and become sustainable. And there's two ways to be able to react to that kind of challenge. Is it one of sort of fear, cost-cutting, closing things down, not fully embracing the digital opportunity, or is it really about total transformation? And I think that, as an organisation, we're going through. We've described ourselves as digital first, we've described ourselves as being global and wanting to be everywhere, and by everywhere being on all platforms. And that is our strategic ambition. And so we're 2 years into that plan. We're very much on track in terms of the targets that we're supposed to be meeting commercially. But more importantly, we're translating from a print-based world into a much more immersive digital space. And as that has allowed us to look and explore many different business models, whether that's by providing content through subscriptions on tablet and mobile, whether that's having a cross-market international sell in terms of monetising our reach globally. We've also opened up an office in New York, which is already one of the 10th largest news providers in the States already, 12.5 million uniques in a month, as well as just the new office we're opening up in Australia. And so it's really critical that our plan is about sustainability, but also innovating and being part of that digital space, as opposed to a sort of a ruthless cutting process about just getting smaller to adapt. Yeah. What we have done, like others and some of our competition are doing as well, is are investing in digital people, in digital skills, digital infrastructure, and combining sort of the best of digital with our great content is the reason why we're so big and why we're growing globally.
Well, picking up on that, in terms of investing in digital people. So again, via Twitter, Danny Watmo has asked, he wanted your reaction to the fact that the Telegraph announced it was to cut 80 print-based journalists' positions and hiring 50 digital posts. So,
and the Telegraph are a massive player in this market, and it's of no surprise that they are looking at the blend of their skills and trying to adapt to some of the pressures that they're under. It's a very obvious thing to do. They need digital skills as well as we do. We have also gone through a recalibration of the sorts of people that we've got in our team. We've got a great digital dev team. We've got fantastic product innovators, which allows our content to be available across all of those platforms. And that means that you do have to get the best of digital skills combined with the best of editorial. And we've gone through the same process.
And are you able to say what percentage is now read on mobile and tablet? Do you know that breakdown?
Yes, I mean, we've got across mobile and tablet, we've got about 230,000 people paying money to be for our content across mobile and tablet. On some days, and this will be increasingly more important, on some days, we've got more mobile traffic going through a mobile device than we have through desktop, and that's just going to continue. Some of the stats and figures that came over through the Olympics was astonishing to come in through, post a huge day like the Mo Farah gold-winning day.
Yeah.
You come in and look at the traffic, and most of our digital traffic on those days were going via mobile rather than desktop.
Yeah.
And one has to fully embrace that. That's the audience being very, very clear about where they want their content.
Excellent.
And it's very important that we provide that and make it available wherever they are.
All right. Well, we've been chatting for over 10 minutes already. Just very quickly, if you have got any comments, do use the hashtag #CIPRtv. We've only got time really for a couple more, so please do get your comments through. We mentioned paywalls earlier, so this comment did come via Twitter. This was from @KennyMurray, who's asked, is it time that news organisations accept that paid content, i.e. behind paywalls, has failed and ads would be better? Now, obviously some people, some sites do use paywalls, so he goes on to say that the failed comment is only on hearsay, as many people he knows are put off by them. And again, just doing a little bit of research, Andrew Miller said in an article in The Economist in January that paywalls may work for some publishers but aren't likely to work for everyone. Newspapers always use a blend of different funding mechanisms to extract revenues for their products. So again, thoughts on paywall? Is that something that you would ever go down that route?
I think we've said on record, you can never say never, but as Andrew said, is that it wouldn't work for us. Yeah. I think we could not talk about our global reach. We couldn't be enjoying the things that we're doing in the States. We couldn't be as social and open, as collaborative with our audience if we cut it off and charged a monthly fee. Yeah. It's just not part of our strategy right now. Yeah. And I think any advertiser or agency that I talk to, it is both interested in our reach but also our engagement, and the engagement comes with being a very social and open site, and that's what we want to continue to do. Okay.
Talking of the future, where do you see news publishing landscape looking in the next 5 years? Is it even possible to predict?
I think you can start with the reader, start with the consumer. What they want and will continue to want is quality news that they can trust. And because of the structure of the Guardian's business, because we are ultimately run and controlled by a trust, which means that our content is ruthlessly independent and can't be influenced commercially at all, that means that we are one of the most trusted news providers in the world. And as a result of that, our traffic continues to grow, and what we provide and do is needed. It's critical that we don't live in a world of opinion, that there is always someone holding both individuals, companies, governments to account. And I think the more independent and the more autonomy that news providers have, the more authentic that output will be. And any research that we do, that's part of kind of almost the human need, is to be able to have trusted independent news. So, and the Guardian is very confident about its place within that. There are others that perhaps won't make that, just because either their content is good enough or they're not embracing the digital opportunity as ruthlessly and aggressively as we are.
But talking about giving opinion, do you see yourselves now competing not just with other publishers but with bloggers as well, or are you embracing them in there?
I think that I've sat on panels and listened to news providers or content providers somehow suggesting they're competing with Twitter. Yeah. I think that's a thankless task. Twitter is a wonderful, real-time way of getting and understanding people's opinion. And that converged together with strong editorial content and points of view is almost the optimal way of telling stories.
Well, we actually had a question in via Twitter asking whether or not Twitter is is where will people be using Twitter instead of press releases to reach you guys?
It could be. I think Twitter continues to be good news brands act as both guiders in a world of complexity, doesn't it? If you spend your whole time just searching content, you get completely lost about where the true story lies. And big brands act as guiders and influencers in this space. So if one just wanted to spend the entire time with Twitter, I think it would be quite difficult to ascertain what the true story is. Yeah. And the Guardian, and like other brands such as the BBC's purpose, is to be able to tell what is going on truthfully. And sometimes, particularly now with Twitter, it's become so complex. Can you really unpick what is fact, what is opinion. And so that combined with what we do is probably about the best thing.
Okay, well, we've got time for one last question because we've been chatting for over 15 minutes. So we're going to finish off with one question: do you see an end to print in the future?
No. Well, look, again, I go with the audience. I mean, there is a trend in terms of newspaper consumption. No one can ignore that. The numbers speak for themselves. But at the moment, it's one of the strongest relationships you have with people who need that literal and physical thing of picking up their paper in the morning. And some of our numbers over the weekend are terribly robust. So people's combination of reading, comment and news on a Saturday and Sunday combined with good digital content means that at the moment it's very much part of the news ecology, and long may that continue.
Good. Okay, well, David, thank you very much for joining us. That is all we have time for. Thank you also for your questions and for your comments via Twitter, both before and during the show. Thanks also to my production colleagues here at Marketers 40C. Don't forget, all previous CIPR TV shows are available on iTunes, and you can subscribe to the feed there by going to the iTunes store and searching on CIPR TV, obviously. So until next time, goodbye.